All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm really excited to chop it up and have a conversation with my friend Ini Archibong here. I'll give him the popcorn in a second to introduce himself. But this is a community conversation that we're having, something that I feel is really important to centralize kind of Black and Brown designers and folks that sit outside of the mainstream in their space, but are excellent and just the greatest at what they do. So if this is your first time rocking with us, grab a tea. Feel free to just take a notebook and get ready for all the gems and jewels that are coming. And if you've been rocking with us for a little bit of time, you know what it is. So I will pass over the popcorn to our esteemed guest, Ini. Feel free to talk to the people, tell them who you are, where you are, what you're up to these days, and we'll jump into some Q&A after that.
Cool. I'm Ini Archibong. I'm here in Neuchâtel, Switzerland, originally from Pasadena, California. And yeah, I guess I'm a multidisciplinary designer, artist, sometimes architectural designer, creative thinker. I guess I'm a published writer now in some way. And yeah, I just think a lot and do a lot.
Make a lot, think a lot, do a lot.
Exactly.
Love it, man. Well, first, on behalf of our community, thanks so much for making some time. I'm here in California. You're like halfway around the world for me, but thankful for the technology that binds us together and for the community that kind of introduced us all those months ago. So maybe we start off talking about like your upbringing and how you kind of came into the work that you're doing now. For people that might not be familiar, sometimes, straightest point between two things is a straight line, and your story doesn't go like that at all. So take us back a little bit and give us some context and background about how you kind of got to be where you're at today.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's a long one. So I guess the best place to start would be dropping out of college. I think, the way that I grew up, I didn't really know that I had the designer in me, that, my natural talents and skills would lend themselves to being a creator in the way that I am right now. So, I grew up in a traditional Nigerian American household. So I went to school to be a businessman. I actually had a scholarship at USC, and I came in as an undergrad, with a fully kind of fleshed out plan for me, to keep that scholarship and study business and come out and be a banker. And I'd say within a year and a half, I realized that wasn't for me. It's an interesting thing when you have a creative mind and you don't stand up for your creativity. The most logical thing for people to do, especially those that love you, is to push you in the direction of a practical way to use your creative brain. But I think the thing that as designers and creatives that we all kind of know deep down is that no matter what you do, you can't stifle the urge to create, to use the same brain power towards, making things, especially making things for the people. So I dropped out of school when I was about 19 or 20. And at that point, I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I needed to create. So I got into the music pretty heavy and started reading books, and also started asking myself what I've been doing, for the majority of my life, where I'd already put in, the proverbial 10,000 hours that can kind of point me in the direction of what I should be doing with my life. I knew I just needed to create, and I knew I needed to be of service of some kind. I was raised, with a spiritual, foundation, so that I didn't really just kind of take my life for granted. I knew that I had to do something that, would be of service to others. So when I took stock of my life and everything that I've done, I realized that, from day one, I've been creating, and also, my creativity has steered me towards visual arts, and in particular, sculpture, woodworking, things related to using my hands, and also the computer. So I've been using, design software just kind of as a hobby for a long time. So, at that point, it became clear that I needed to be a creative, and it became clear that I'd grown up playing music and using these tools and using my hands, so that at this point, the way that I saw the world around me, was different. I could think of something and then build it. I'd always been able to do that. Nobody had told me that, that's design. So at this point, I still don't think I knew about design at this point. I went straight for architecture and worked in architecture for a while, and then discovered design while visiting the Art Center College of Design, and starting to take some night courses. And yeah, the rest is history. Then I became a design student and eventual designer.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like the usefulness of all of the different things that you had as hobbies, like how they kind of pooled into what makes you great as a designer today is really interesting. Like to see kind of your musical equipment in the background, and to even remind myself of how my mom was like, no, you need to go for engineering and keep your musicianship as like a hobby if you want to, but like that cannot be the main thing, because musicians don't have healthcare and like insurance. So yeah, it's one of those full circle things where you get to maybe in your professional life now be able to lean hard and heavy into those hobbies. But
I mean, it's even interesting to look at them as hobbies, because especially as a kid, when you're growing up and you're creative and somebody puts an instrument in your hand and you start learning it, it doesn't feel like a hobby when you're doing it. It feels like it's serious, It's same thing with sports. You get out there on the field and, being good enough to be considered for college athletics, and then, having a brother that, was a professional athlete, you realize that at a certain point, you're like, yeah, this is fun, but it's also serious. I have to take this practice serious. I got to be serious when I get in the game. And having that seriousness with all these things that didn't seem, to be like the professional or career path, like you said, the full circle is now I feel like I design, like I make music, like I played sports, like it all kind of, it's just who I am and how I approach things.
Yeah, that's super interesting that the mindset, even though it's applied to many different things, is very similar kind of across. I'd love to maybe double click into how important like community and mentorship has been in your kind of path. I know that we could all take classes and kind of teach ourselves a particular piece of a domain, but sometimes that human factor, and you mentioned business, like sometimes it always needs to be tied to the money in order to be like something that's substantial and can like take care of you and your family. Like how have community and kind of mentorship in the field of design come together for you?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I'm a huge nerd, right? So I was always into comic books, fantasy, literature, things like that. And the hero of the story, the protagonist, always has somebody who teaches them how to like tap into like the deeper depths of their greatness, to bring out, what that person can see in them that they might not see in themselves, or they might not be able to access yet, right? Yeah. So I think I've always kind of gravitated toward being, that that mentee or that apprentice. Even when my mentors might not have realized that I saw them as mentors, like along the path, I kind of identified who God put in my path to teach me something and recognize that, and then devote myself to learning no matter what the sacrifice, right? And I think, taking that approach, from, I guess, a pretty early age made it so that I've always had the benefit of mentors at any given moment. And I'm not sure if it's, just the fact that I'm able to recognize them when they're there. Not sure if everybody is so fortunate to come across people that can teach them and support them. But yeah, at every stage of my development and my professional career, kind of had people that stand as reminders of how far I can go, right? How I can take the next step, how I could be thinking bigger than I was thinking before, and just, giving me information because I asked the questions. So, from that standpoint, the mentors that I've had have been essential. Also looking to people that I've never even met, historical figures, and trying to learn from them. It's always been an important part. And again, I think it goes to, I think a couple of things. I think it has a lot to do with culture. And I also think that it has a lot to do with, the things that we wanted to learn, at least my generation. I know, like, the stuff that I wanted to learn when I was a teenager, you learn from other people, right?
Yeah.
Especially like when it comes to like making music. You want to make hip hop music, you don't like, it was like the late 90s, early 2000s. Like, what, there's no website to teach
Yeah.
you. There's no class on making beats, right? You get a turntable and you start asking the older heads how to do stuff, right? And so I guess to me, it's always been natural to have a mentor, to also know how to, I guess you could say, like, sample but make things my own, from learning from the greats. If you want to make good beats, listen to a lot of Jay Dilla, you'll figure out some tips and tricks, right?
Yeah.
It's that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where if you look at who's in your circle, if they're making you better and if you got stuff to learn, then you keep that circle. But if not, it might be time to try to find some new folks to surround yourself with. I definitely have been the beneficiary of being the least among many smart people all throughout kind of my engineering career, here in business today, and then also kind of in design and in teaching. So yeah, that's awesome, man. To talk about, we're in a pandemic right now, health challenges. Has your process and any of the work itself changed as a result of kind of these last 2.5, 3 years, or have you been rocking pretty steady and able to get things accomplished in the same kind of process and way that you would kind of before all this craziness happened?
No, it's tough to say. It's funny because I mean my creative process has always kind of been a solitary process. So I lock myself up in the basement and I get busy, right? That's always been the way that I work. That's how I put out almost all my designs prior to the pandemic, and up until I started doing some more rather large scale stuff. But to some degree, it's still always the same. I'm in here cooking up. Even like the studio that I lead, they're working in a different location. So in that sense, from a creative standpoint, the fact that the pandemic hit and the world didn't know what to do, I got less phone calls and I had to travel a little bit less for a while. So in that sense, I at the beginning of the pandemic, I got a lot of creative work done. Probably the biggest transition is that, and I think it's appropriate that it happened, at this juncture, is that the, we kind of, as designers, especially industrial designers, we started to take it for granted that, that part of our income and part of our job was going to be to produce more stuff every year to present at the different fairs, whether it's NeoCon in Chicago or Milan or New York or wherever, Copenhagen, wherever you're presenting work. We got into this cycle of just like make another chair, make another table. And that was, something that I think the pandemic changed. I think people had to kind of sit back and take stock of like what needs to be made. All those opportunities weren't there. So we all had to find different ways to use our creativity to, continue to be of service, even when you're not out here putting out a new chair every year, right? So I think that's been different. A lot more Zoom, I'll say.
Yeah, for better or for worse, right? It is cool that it connects us, but sometimes the inner social part of me wants to crack open a beer with somebody or like have a face-to-face lunch or coffee with somebody. So I'm calling it. At some point, you and I will figure out how to make that happen, man. Let's talk about, I know for the next several months, my focus will be with my students on social impact. And when you think about kind of the large challenges that we have, whether it's, health in the pandemic or climate change or kind of social justice, what's been kind of the way that you think about that as a designer and a way that design can help to help us think about those challenges and then help to solve some of the big stuff that we as human beings need to do in order to make Earth sustainable for our children and for the next generations?
Yeah. I don't talk about, I guess, how did you term it?
Social impact or social justice. Yeah.
Social justice or socially aware design. I mean, it's okay. To be honest, I think about this stuff a lot. I've always thought about this stuff a lot. I have pretty strong viewpoints on a lot of things, regarding the social realm. But I definitely know what I was blessed with to use as my tools to fight, right? So, a lot of times, for me at least, my approach has been, to move in a way that befits, how I can be most effective, in all the different aspects, right? So from a design standpoint, from like a industrial design, technical standpoint, my pen is a pen for making beautiful things, right? And those beautiful things give the opportunity for people to think about things, but it doesn't force people to think about things.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a way of affecting things in I guess you could say a subversive or subliminal way without necessarily, standing on the soapbox, right? I think, I've been fortunate to have a pretty long career at this point. I mean, I still feel like I'm at the beginning, but
yeah.
I've been putting stuff out into the world, I guess, for the past, over a decade. And no matter how much I put myself into all of my work, I'm not sure that anybody really paid attention to how much culture I was putting into the objects that I was putting out into the world until recently, right? And now I get asked the questions in an interview, but like, I've been doing this for 10 years. It's only within the last year and a half to 2 years that anybody's asked me what it's like to be a Black designer, right?
Yeah.
And I've done plenty of interviews, and to some degree, I think that being patient and knowing when is it time to speak and when is it time to make has served me well. because to be honest now, I have, more of a platform to speak from when I do speak.
Yeah.
Um, I do think it's important that especially as a Black designer, that part of our right is to be able to choose who we want to be, how we want to represent ourselves, and how much of that we take on. It
Yeah.
shouldn't, it shouldn't be forced, especially by somebody outside, for any one of us to be representative of, the entirety of our culture, and for the entirety of the small handful of us that are out here professionally, designing things that get put out into the world. Right. So taking, like, yeah, accepting that you have the right to choose when and how to fight your fight, I think is an important thing to remember. And then onto some like purely design and design in a socially aware way. I think one of the things that is an opportunity for those that are deciding to really apply their design skills in a direct way. I think now there's like a great opportunity to start thinking about how the world has been designed without somebody that looks like me in mind, and the things that I deal with and go through, and the products that are out there, that we have to use for whatever it is that we need to use them for, but especially when it comes to, the social justice fight. I think back to 2020, when that summer when it got hot, and there's protests everywhere, and I'm sitting there looking at a lot of these things and thinking like, wow, we don't necessarily have something that takes into the account that we need to record, these protests in a way that the people that we're protesting against can't disable the way that we, share information amongst ourselves, right? Where is the platform for sharing information? Where's the Slack that takes into account that phones are getting confiscated? Where's the how do we deal with some of those issues? I mean, one of the things that me and my team actually did during that time was think about, when you have these different methods of recording, everybody's using their phone and that's not really acting effectively. But then you have like really rugged sport video cameras out there that are there to take a beating, and what if those were set up in a way that they were protest ready, right?
Yeah.
And then things like that are small ways to use design in a way that sets up a future where the things that we were missing are there, and I think that in a way can help with a lot of the social things that we're trying to rectify at the moment.
Yeah, that's great feedback. And like the activism is one piece of it. I think there's a bunch of kind of philanthropic and nonprofit work to try to fix and level up playing fields in education.
Yeah.
So the different places to kind of apply our design expertise, but I think the awareness, a lot of that came in summer 2020 for a lot of folks who had to really reckon, before. So it's good that folks are living outside of the bubble more today than they were previously.
I think education is important for the young designers as well. I think that like when I went to design school, we would touch on certain things, but it was about designing stuff. You went to school and you spent all your time drawing. And if you had homework in a humanities class just so that you could get the credits, you did that to get it done, right? But I think, like you said, like socially aware design is a very broad spectrum. Somebody might be very dedicated to sustainability and climate change. when I think of it, I lean toward, activism just because of the way my brain is tuned, right? But the most important thing I think as a designer is knowing who you are, what your philosophy is, and what you're tuned for, and then it becomes, I think things become a lot more natural in terms of like, how you're going to address the social ills of the world, and how you're going to try to fix things, and where you're going to dedicate your philanthropic time.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, yeah, I appreciate you double clicking into that question a little bit, and giving myself and some of the community here some nuggets to think about. Love to shift over. You mentioned kind of putting stuff into the world for, over a decade. What are some of the things that you love to call out for people to check out, things that you're like especially proud of, or things that like have a funny story behind them that we wouldn't, know or see if we were to just kind of look you up and kind of search, the end product on Google?
I don't know. Like, done a bunch of stuff. um, I think probably the thing, and again, like, you ask me at any different time, you're going to get a different answer about what I want to highlight. But yeah, like experiences. I think for me, the experiential projects like the Oracle at the Dallas Museum of Art, and then the reboot, where we caution taped it. I think that was probably one of the first large scale experiences, immersive and interactive experiences that I was able to put out there. And truly that's the background of why I do what I do, and the underpinning of my designs. But usually I'm designing an object that occupies the space, right? Or I'm designing an object that somebody's utilizing within a space, and I take all these things into consideration. But this project was the first one where I control the entire space, from the lighting to the sound, to the entire experience.
Yeah. So if someone's never seen this before, could you walk us through like kind of the symbolism of what some of these things mean in this space?
Yeah. Oof. It's layers. um, okay, first to I guess where it comes from. It's called the Oracle.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a certain through line with some of my work that kind of relates to this fantasy world, this world inside my head that is, I guess the term would be Afrofuturist now. To me, it's just like, it's the blending of spirituality, science fiction, ancestral knowledge, and culture, and all those things, right? And mythology and all of that. But this is something where I start to create experiences that I hope that people can take themselves out of their normal reality and imagine that they're being exposed to artifacts that come from this mythological universe that's centered around the children of the African diaspora. So tapping into like all of those things and trying to understand how to explain a very large and universal concept, such as where do you go to get the answers for the bigger questions in your life, both spiritually and temporally, and what does it feel like to ask those questions, to get those answers, and to be one of many that are asking their own questions of the universe at the same time, and you're receiving all of the feedback all at once through all of your senses, right? I don't know if I'm losing you.
No, I'm following. Looking
But
at the
so
different ways that you could interpret this. And did this have sound as well? I see speakers up on
yeah.
it. Okay.
So what this is this is an oracle where it's meant to represent stepping into a space like an ancient oracle where you would travel, you get to, you know, this mountaintop and step into this alabaster white space. And when you step in, you just see a pool of water that's vibrating and creating different patterns. And then you see the glowing orbs, and you're hearing kind of like an inundation of sonic input, right? So each one of those sculptures, as you rotate it, controls the sound in the space in a different way. And so the way that, you know, it's explained when you walk in is you walk up to one of those stands, and you know, you ask a question of the universe, and as you turn it, you receive a response. But you can imagine there's somebody standing at each one of those that's doing the exact same thing. So what you're getting is you're getting an influx of sonic input that's coming out from the space. And also, as that's happening, the vibration that's running through the pool and the sub frequency is, you know, changing the patterns physically in the liquid. And as all of this is happening, it's meant to give that feeling of, you know, the ritual of asking a question of the universe or your ancestors, and then doing something to initiate the process of receiving an answer, and then trying to decipher your answer from the chaotic confusion of everybody asking the same universe the same questions, right? And yeah, I think one of the important things about highlighting this is that, you know, you walk in, you have an experience, and everything is beautifully made and done. But in order for this to exist in this kind of pure way, took a lot of industrial design, engineering, and architectural know-how to get it done, you know, and the team of craftsmen that are excellent at their field. All of the sound in the space, all of those sculptures control a different part of a modular synthesizer that was made with my younger brother that's hidden behind that wall. And that in itself was an adventure.
Wow. It sounds like a super cool feat. And then to get like someone's who's just kind of onboarding into design, kind of an appreciation for this contemporary design and like the infusion of not just like the aesthetic and how something looks, but like the technical kind of aspects behind it. In addition to kind of the concept, like as you're walking in and feeling this as an exhibit goer, like this is awesome to have people who are on ramping into this space start to learn how you would craft an experience like this, how you would build it, how you would, I'm probably sure you saw this in your mind before you saw it out there, and it's just like so many different steps. So getting a little bit of a behind the scenes kind of look into your process is awesome for you to share with us. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So I know you've just got a couple minutes left. I know one of the things that helps me kind of get through my days, especially the long ones, is to smile and to set goals for kind of what I want my future to look like. So maybe top things that you're putting on your 2022 bucket list to try to strive for and achieve. And then the second question will be just things that you draw inspiration from and things that like make you smile, keep you going, and motivated throughout your days.
Yeah. 2022. I don't know. I think I have more personal goals than anything else. As far as like, you know, the professional stuff, you know, it's, you know, I take it the same way. Like I said, I like the same way that you would play jazz or play a sport, right? I've done all the practice. I've set everything up. it's game time, I react and I see the field and I make decisions. So in that sense, I never really start a year with like professional goals, so to speak. I know that might sound strange because I know for a lot of people it's important to do that. But I just kind of keep in mind like the bigger picture, overarching destination that became clear to me when I started the journey.
Yeah.
And I hold on to that more than anything. Inspiration. I mean, I'm super I'm basic with this. Like music is probably the biggest thing. And reading. You know, reading and music keep me inspired. Looking at nature as often as possible, absorbing nature as often as possible, not just looking at is always important, but I think the music and the reading keep me going, keeps my head in the right space to be creative.
Yeah, gotcha. I just finished Will Smith's autobiography on Audible. So to take music and like books and put it together, you just brought that back to my memory. I would recommend it to anybody who's watching. Do you have any recent ones that you'd recommend for folks?
Recent books?
Recent reads or recent listens where you like, oh, you gotta check that out.
No, I don't usually think in these terms, but I'm trying to think what is probably the most recent is I've been on a pretty interesting music kick. And started listening to old stuff that I used to like when I first started making beats, like DJ Vadim. But I'm also like super into like prog rock and jazz, like that fusion, that blending of jazz and rock and roll that gives you like the kind of mathematical, sonic blending.
Yes.
Where the time signatures are changing, all of that, and really control emotions. There's a band from, I guess they're from the early 2000s, Godspeed You, Black Emperor. Recommend that. Okay. It'll take you on an emotional journey. The songs are like, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 minutes long. Yeah, they're like 25-minute songs.
Wow.
And it's something that I don't know, when I'm working, there's two moods I'm in. Either I've got something looped up and that loop is running the whole time and it's driving whatever I'm doing, or I like to get into like music that kind of tells a story. So I recommend that. And book-wise, Seven Valleys. Recommend that. Seven Valleys.
Got it. Yeah, I'm in the same space in terms of musically. Always paying homage to the producers, like Jay Dilla stays on repeat. I'm excited for Robert Glasper's Black Radio 3 that comes out next month. Love the sounds that come out of his bands. And outside of kind of that last book, I'm reading, I don't know if you follow Tabitha on Instagram, but she's got a book called Feeding Your Soul that's out that I'm listening to right now. It's my next listen. I don't read as much as I should.
Yeah. I need to, I might want to start getting into some of the audiobooks. I'm scared of that though. I don't know if I will be able to retain the information, right? Like somehow reading, and I'm like old school. I have, whenever I'm reading anything, whether it's like, spiritual text or if it's like, engineering, I have like a highlighter and post-it notes. and honestly, it's very rare that I go back to a book, but whenever I do go back to a book and I start looking at what I was thinking about when I read it, I can almost go back to a book, open it to a random page, see whatever I highlighted on that page and start designing based on that.
Yeah. Wow. That's such a bar for the younger designers who are learning about empathy. So to be able to go backwards and jump into a frame of mind. I mean, in this case, it's your own frame of mind, but like being able to be detailed enough to capture enough context and detail to kind of be able to understand what the other side is saying, what they're feeling, what they're needing. That sounds like a superpower that you've got down. And the fact that you don't read anything or like do anything without sticky notes and without like a highlighter is, yeah, you're a super designer.
You always got to be able to reference, I guess. But yeah, the empathy is important. I think that's one of the biggest things about reading, right? And it's probably the best thing that I did while I was in design school was that I always had a book on me that I was reading, like, and I never, like, no matter how much homework I had, no matter like what it was, I was always reading. So like whenever I would get those couple of weeks off in between terms, that's when I would just start writing, everything that I was thinking about while I was reading that book and designing at the same time. Because that empathy of jumping into the mind frame of who's writing the book and then seeing how it applies to what you're doing, out here as a designer, and connecting those dots makes it so that, pretty soon you start to understand what your philosophy is, based on your interactions with others and your way of interpreting others and how to solve problems for others, honestly.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Well, I think we've just got a minute or two left. So I just want to say again, on behalf of our whole community here, thank you so much for spending some time. And once this COVID thing is over, man, I'm gonna find a way to get to Switzerland, grab me some chocolate, and I don't know, hit the slopes or something. You tell me what I gotta do out there.
We're ready for you. I live on the lake, so
Okay.
Pull up. We'll sit down on the beach and drink beer.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. Well, well, enjoy the rest of the day, the week, and yeah, at some point we'll be able to connect. And if the students or the community have questions, I'll point them to your socials and website and everything. But you dropped a whole bunch of stuff for us to think about. So for that, we all say thank you.
Oh, thank you, sir.
All right. Until next time, man. Take care of yourself. All the best to your family, your community there, and yeah, we'll see you next time, bro.
All right, sir.
All right. Take care. All right.